The Strength Beyond Struggle podcast brings you mental health stories from the front lines. We're sponsored by Ending the Silence, a program by the National Alliance for Mental Illness, NAMI, funded by the Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System. We bring you the stories of people with lived experience. We do not offer therapy for any mental health condition and cannot substitute for professional assessment and treatment. In every episode, we deal with difficult mental health topics, including suicide. So if you're struggling, remember, you can always get help by calling 988. So welcome to the Strength Beyond Struggle podcast, and I'm here today with Ecko Helmick.
Yes.
And we are going to talk about how animals have played a role in your life in terms of, because you have multiple diagnoses with mental health conditions.
I do.
Yes. And which is kind of typical. Sometimes there's dual diagnosis, but animals have really helped you remain grounded, and it just sounds like brought you a sense of well-being and peace, and you still have them in your life. And in fact, you're going to have a career working with animals. You're going to be a farrier. So
Fingers crossed.
yes, yeah. Once they get fixed.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Because you're an interesting person to pick farrier. So already our audience should know that, that's an interesting choice.
It's a dying industry. I'm all about, preserving that sort of thing. And it's one of those things that not a lot of people think about anymore. So kind of shows it.
So is that part of your background? So when you were a child, were you involved with things that were old and
I had grandparents.
Okay.
It's like, no.
Yeah.
No, you just grow up in the area, I always loved horses, but I never had my own type deal. So I'm like, well, if I put shoes on other people's horses, I get to have fun with them and I don't have to own them.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
But as a child, actually, I have to tell the audience, the first time I met you was at a charter school.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe you were like dressed as a raccoon.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah. And so I know that, as I met, it was striking, and you stood out because I was a reporter and was covering education, and the school you were at was very creative. And I know the teacher you were working with was very creative. And I remember her saying that you were a unique child. And so was that typical of your childhood?
I think that was code for this kid's autistic, but yeah, I don't know. I just never fit into boxes. So yeah, being a unique child, I think it came with pre-diagnosis. The signs were there type
like what
deal.
kind of signs?
Being very into my interests, I guess, hyperfixations, special interests, things of that nature. And they didn't always make sense type deal. So like for a long time, it was just like dinosaurs. Kids like dinosaurs. I lived and breathed dinosaurs.
Obsessed.
Yeah. Before I could actually have sentences, I could point in like encyclopedias and tell my mom the scientific name of dinosaurs, like their Latin names, and tell my mom like who found them and where and when. And I wasn't even in kindergarten.
So obviously everyone knew you were wicked smart.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
But they also realized you were unique.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did animals play a role at that time in your life?
Yeah. We always had animals. I think a lot of it stemmed from my mom. She had weird animals as a kid.
Like what?
She thought she got a potbelly pig when she was a teenager. That's her favorite animal. And it turned out it was like a hog.
Oh, it grew quite large.
Yeah. And it was raised around a Doberman Pinscher, so it barked. And her name was Cleopigra Josephine. I don't know why. So anyways, that was Clejo Pijo is what we called her. And then she had chinchillas. So when I was a kid, if I wanted an animal, my parents were all like, okay, cool. Like they kind of like helped with that, I guess. Like I had a guinea pig, I had fish tank, I had lizards, a tarantula at one point.
Basically a zoo.
Yeah.
And your parents were fine with that.
They bought most of them, so.
Okay. So they realize that these animals, because the research shows that animals calm kids, because it sounds like, because you said one of your diagnoses is ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a nephew with ADHD, and it's really, it takes a lot to get him focused, especially when he was younger.
Oh, yeah.
And animals, so the research says that animals with ADHD kids, if they would read to them in the classroom, they actually had better social skills, and they calmed down and they were able to focus. And is that kind of what happened with you with animals?
It was more like routine, I guess. That, and I didn't have a lot of friends. So, yeah, social skills, not great at them. But I did learn routine, responsibility, that type of thing. Guinea pig gets fed before school, tarantula gets fed after school, that type of deal. And that was just when I was little. Then I did a semester of FFA in high school, and then I was like, whoa, agriculture. And then it just went from there. At that point, I was like goats, pigs, rabbits. I had rabbits for a while. That's what I showed. So that kind of just, I don't know,
became kind of your world, because you told me
Yeah.
you had a crisis point, and it actually had to do with an animal container.
Yeah, it was a fish tank. I did specify it had to be empty. I would not have put my fist through a fish tank housing things. I think at the time it had just been retired from housing frogs that we raised. So it was empty.
But it was this was the crisis moment when your family and you realized, because you were saying that you really didn't, it's because you're telling us in high school you've got all these animals, FFA, and you didn't have a lot of friends and all these things. It sounds like the animals became your friends.
Yeah. They gave you something to do.
So what was it about this crisis moment when you had so much anger? And I mean, did all of these diagnoses you have, did they interrupt and disrupt your ability to have relationships with people?
Yeah, I feel like I always had a hard time with people, but the animals kind of bridged the gap, especially in high school.
Okay.
FFA is really where I was able to like open up. We were all there for the same thing. We were all there for the same common goal. I did not come from a ranch, but half the kids in my class did. But we all had different backgrounds, and we were all there for the same unified goal of being an FFA, that type of thing. And it just did not stop there. It did not start there. It just kept going from there. But I went from a very small school with a lot of, it was a variety of children throughout, I think it was like kindergarten through 12th grade for a long time. So going from a school that size to the high school, even though it's not huge, that was like a culture shock. I had not been around that many kids ever. I remember getting to school the first day and coming home and telling my mom, I don't want to go back. I didn't know there were that many kids in Payson.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, and do you think that your mental health conditions sort of contributed to that anxiety and the...
Yeah, I think most teenagers go through that whole like, everybody's looking at me. And when you're already like, I don't want to sound egotistical, but when you're leagues ahead of them already, you kind of look around and you're all like, they won't get it. They aren't going to get it, but you're different. So you're going to be looked at. So I was really smart, but I was doing very poorly in school, which kind of came as a surprise to my parents, because I did really, really well at
the smaller school.
Yeah. At the charter school. Like straight A's. They were like, this kid's going places. And then I get to the high school and it was just like immediate 180. It was just like roadblock, flip around, go the other way.
But there was one class where the teacher had a unique partner.
Oh, yeah.
And so you want to tell us about Kiwi and...
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this was my senior year of high school. So we had already been going through this for a minute. I think at the time of my senior year, I had a 1.2 GPA. Yeah. It was a little rough. I think it might have been a 2. I think I was pushing a 2 my senior year. But I went to my physics class, and at first I was like, it was intro to physics, so it wasn't even that hard. But I was sitting there and I was like, I can't pass algebra. How am I supposed to pass physics?
Right.
And then I don't know if it was the way he taught, but it clicked. However, my anxiety was still very much present. And Kiwi was such a helper, like a little helper. She would,
And she's a dog.
she's a dog.
Yes.
Yeah, Kiwi's a dog.
Uh-huh.
I believe she came from the Humane Society here in town, so patient resident, born and bred.
Uh-huh.
And so she would like sit under my desk, and just having her presence was like, whoa, I could just focus. I don't know necessarily how to describe it, but it just clicked. It's like things made sense inexplicably. They just
But
clicked.
that's what the research shows, what you're
Yeah,
talking about. You're in
exactly.
a complicated class, and she's just sitting under your chair.
And while I wasn't like reading out loud to her, it was still like in my head, okay, I'm Kiwi's my tutor, Kiwi's helping, or like however my subconscious twisted it around. But it's essentially the same thing that was happening. I just wasn't like in fourth grade reading to the class Goldfish. I was a senior in high school with a terrible GPA, and I was doing physics work to Kiwi. So, it helped. It helped a lot, actually. I think his class was one of the only classes that I want to say I passed it with like a B or something.
Wow.
Like, yeah.
Got your GPA up.
Just a little. I still did not graduate high school. I did not, that class alone did not get me to graduate. I did end up getting my GED.
Well, congratulations. I mean, just listening to, and can you tell us some of the diagnosis that you're living with?
Yeah. Okay, so I have post-traumatic stress disorder, autism, but I got diagnosed with that later in life. I think I was 21 when I got diagnosed with that. ADHD, and I received that diagnosis when I was 12. That one came like immediately after the crisis.
The fish tank crisis.
Yeah. And then you got to do the mental math. Oh, and bipolar type 2. So that one was the big one.
And when was that? When did that happen?
I got diagnosed with bipolar type 2, I think, as soon as I turned 18.
Okay.
So I was able to get another psych eval. I think it's something they do when you turn 18 and you become an adult. Process essentially starts over because you're your own guardian. So when I went back and I was like, okay, well, I'm 18. I want to start doing this. I got a psych eval. And they were like, hey, you have bipolar. And I was all like, that's neat. And we were like, type 2. And I was like, I didn't even know there were 2 types. And I've got the second one. I was like, is that better or worse? And they were like, that's subjective. And I was like, okay, cool.
Sorry. It's a whole thing. In mental health, it's like this range. And you're like, look, I'm on the chart. Okay.
Yeah. It's like, if you were looking at like, what's the slope of bipolar and where do I fall? Like, where's the Y and X axis of my existence on the spectrum of mental health? And it changes, you can be here one day and then here the next. So that's kind of what they told me. I mean, I feel like mental health is always a work in progress. Just because you haven't had a new diagnosis in 5 years doesn't mean there's not a missing puzzle piece that you'll be presented with when you're 18, 19. I mean, I know my mom she was told she had like OCD at 41. So, anytime you decide to start treatment or continue treatment, you are opened up to the possibility of there being a new diagnosis, which in my experience, getting the diagnosis is not the hard part. That's the easy part. Now it's like, how do I
learn to live with it?
Yeah. I mean, you've been living with it. I guess it's more of how do I treat this and integrate treatment into my daily life, especially if you already have a routine or a regimen,
So did animals help you at any point are they part of your routine?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Are animals part of your routine?
Okay. So when I was 17, I got a dog. I wanted my own dog forever. So I finally got one. He was a Craigslist special, as I like to call it. Best $125 I ever spent. And I had him for years. I had him until February of this year.
2024.
Yeah. He was 11 when he got put down.
Yeah, what was his name?
Camo.
Yeah.
That's short for Cameron. That is his legal name.
But he was a German Shepherd?
German Shepherd Lab.
So did he look kind of like the German Shepherd, like tough?
He looks like a German Shepherd, except he had lab ears. That's the best way I could describe it.
Was he just adorable?
He was so cute. He was literally the cutest dog to ever exist. I'm biased, but it's also the truth. And so he got put down in February, and then very, very shortly after, within the same week of him getting put down, like this dog kind of just fell into my life. Yet another Craigslist special. I was just kind of browsing for no real reason other than I could. And I saw this dog and I was like, I think I'm going to get this dog. And I met him. The lady was like, hey, you got to take him or he's going to the shelter. And I was like, uh-oh, what did I get into? And so I brought him home, and he's actually a great dog. He just needs the right home and understanding and a job. And so he has a very important job. He's going to finish his training to be a service dog. So that's kind of what he started out as with the old owner. But she just had back problems and couldn't keep up with what his breed demands.
So, are you telling me that, I mean, you're going to make this therapy dog, and the new dog's named Brio?
Oh, yes.
I've met Brio. You haven't all, but I've met Brio, sweet dog. And it sounds like Camo was the same.
Yeah.
And so, and you've told me that you like to train your dogs.
Yes.
Is that part of how the therapy with your mental health works, that interacting with them? And
yeah, it falls back into the same whole like routine, but also gives you a sense of purpose and a distinct sense of accomplishment. So, you have a dog. Some people have really easy dogs. One of my dogs is the easiest dog to teach. So it's like it's almost like instant gratification, because if I'm like feeling real low, I know I can turn to that dog and be all like, okay, you're going to learn something new today. And he's like, okay, what are we learning? And I can just teach him something. And, having a dog be able to do something because you taught them to, it's kind of like if you were to build a house or something. You put a time and effort and energy into it, and then at the end of the day, you get to take a step back and say, I did that. So I like to think of a trained dog as a house. You can consider your house being finished, but you can always remodel it, add a porch, picket fence. So his job is never done. Their jobs are never done learning, and that's their job, is to learn. So that alone changes everything.
And it's just giving you more purpose.
Yep.
And satisfaction. Because do you find because what you're talking about with your late diagnosis of you were talking about autism creates sort of a difficulty with communication, or is it just you were saying it was more sensory?
So mine was both. As an adult, when you get diagnosed like late in life with autism, you have to learn how to socialize. If you want to be a grown adult and have a job and do all this sort of stuff, you kind of force yourself to either mask and kind of hide who you are, or you learn how to integrate who you are into like everyday things. So for a long time, I would just mask. Like, people would be all like, well, what do you like to do for fun? And I would just make something up because I couldn't look them in the eyes and be all like, here's my current special interest. Let me tell you about it for the next 45 minutes. And also here's every detail about it to ever happen. So I would just be all like, oh, I read, or like whatever, And so autism comes with its own special set of challenges. Mine, while it is social, I don't like talking to strangers. I don't like crowds. And that is kind of like just because I have my slew of diagnoses, I guess. It's not just the autism, but it is one of those things where the autism does make it difficult to have interpersonal relationships. It's kind of like, you're never going to get it. It's hard to connect with people because I am different from them. And everybody's individual and everybody's unique, but when you have autism, it's hard to, unless you meet somebody else who's autistic,
then you kind of,
then it's a whole different ball game, that's different. But
yeah, I see you.
Yeah.
But don't you have that with animals a little bit though too?
Yeah.
They always accept you, don't they?
Yeah. I can make my dog sit and stay for a long time. So I make him sit and stay, and then I'm all like, hey, I'm going to tell you about everything because everybody else in the house is tired of hearing about it. So you're going to listen. And, it works wonders. But if you've ever seen a dog roll his eyes because you've been talking to him for too long.
Do they really?
Yeah, I have a husky mix, and let me tell you, he is.
Well, huskies are I have a mallet, and I had a husky before. They just kind of have an attitude.
Believe it or not, he's my easiest dog to train. He knows like 45 tricks. I should have brought him in, and the podcast could have just been him doing tricks for like the next 30 minutes.
Wow. A husky.
He's a German Shepherd Husky Shiba Inu.
Okay. So maybe that's why he has some mix in there, because otherwise they're pretty.
No, I hear Shiba Inus are also very stubborn dogs. So the German Shepherd came in real strong. So
how interesting, though, that you've got these dogs and you chat with them, and they're your friends, and they get you through. And any other animals? And is that why you've decided that you want to go into this world of being a farrier and work with horses? Is that part of the reason?
Sort of. It's also one of those things that there's like a high market for it, and I get to be my own boss, which significantly reduces the amount of people I have to deal with. I get to do my own, I mean, I don't have to, but I could do my own finances, set up my own appointments. So it's very much like I am talking to the person I'm providing a service for. You know, there's no middleman, there's no nothing else. It's kind of like, well, if you don't like me or the way I do things, there's other farriers you can go to. Same thing where if I don't like a client, I still have that ability to say, you know, I don't want to work with you. And that gives me a way of advocating for myself. So I'm not forced into uncomfortable situations that the typical brick and mortar 9-to-5 would present you with. So
do you need that because of your particular mix of everything?
Yeah. It's hard working with a rotating cast or crew of people, you know, in retail or in a restaurant or whatever, where everybody has their own set role. And it's like, go to so-and-so or talk to so-and-so. And it's like, well, I don't know so-and-so. So I don't really want to talk to so-and-so because I don't know them. And then the anxiety and the fear and all of that stuff starts spiraling because it's like, well, I don't know this person, you know, and work relationships are always like surface level too. So you never feel comfortable enough to look somebody in the eyes and be all like, hey, you know, it seems like you and me have the same whatever, you know what I mean? Because in the past, I have told employers like, hey, this is what's going on with me. Forgive me. I just got put on a new med or whatever. And that has significantly damaged my workplace relationships. So being able to, own my own business and say, I need a day off today, call my clients and say, I can work you in tomorrow or whatever day works best for you. Being able to have that liberty to advocate for myself is really nice. And I like working with my hands. I feel like if you do physical labor, it kind of works out all of the stress, the anxiety, the whatever is in there, it builds up in your muscles like lactic acid. At least that's how it is for me. So working and being active and doing something, accomplishing something, that helps significantly.
And so you're 25 years old right now. 25 years old right now.
Yep.
And part of what we're trying to do in this podcast is we bring people in to talk about, you know, what is it? You know, you're sitting here and you've told us you've been very honest. Thank you so much. And all these things you've struggled with, the things that you're living with, the ways that you're dealing with them. And I'm hoping that by people telling their stories like this, that others can maybe say, you know, maybe I could use something. So I want to ask you, because you're here today and you've been through this for so long, what would you like to tell other people, you know, 12-year-olds that are thinking about punching a fish tank?
Don't do it. There's definitely other ways for you to get help. Talk to somebody. If I had just talked to my teacher instead of barging into a classroom and putting my fist through a fish tank, situation probably would have been handled in a much less traumatic way. But I didn't realize that A, other people could feel this way, and B, there were other alternative routes to getting help. So that's what I would do. I would say breathe through it and definitely just reach out in a calm fashion. You know, if you're worked up, everybody else is going to be worked up. Try and present yourself in the relaxed way possible. And
ask for help. I mean, how did you end up asking for help?
I punched a fish tank, and
that was a cry for help.
Yeah, and then my family talked to the school, and they were like, "Your kid needs therapy." And my mom was like, "Oh God, oh no, oh God!" And then she was so worked up because she was like, "How could my kid just do this?" and all that sort of stuff. And so then I went to Southwest, and I got help, and I've been going to Southwest for
And Southwark
13.
Behavioral and Payson,
Yeah.
where we have our mental health services. And
Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
doing therapy there for like 13 years off and on.
And a lot of families go there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you would encourage families to go seek help there if they're in Payson?
100%. Yeah. They have so many resources for young adults, kids, parents, learning how to deal with these things and cope and educating yourself. They have groups and classes and all manner of things.
Well, I think that's all we wanted to ask. I know I'm trying to think here because I saw we edit out certain parts. Is there anything else you wanted to say besides? I mean, you are so eloquent, and I'm sure you drove your parents and the teachers batty in high school. Why it didn't work? But is there anything else you'd want to tell the kids who are struggling? Because 50% of mental health conditions show up by the age of 14. So
yeah, I guess be yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. You are distinctly unique. And honestly, what you think might be a weakness can actually be a strength. So that's kind of the way I look at it. You know,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm choosing a job that'll pay me very well, and I get to be my own boss. It's making my weaknesses in other settings into strengths where they need to be.
I think that's some of the best advice you could give. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm glad I came.
It's okay to just be me. We're all made to be unique. It's okay to have my needs. It's okay to be me. What's easy for others are struggles for me. I do things differently. Doesn't make me broken. It just makes me me. People out there help me through, ones who care about me and you. Through my struggles I find my strength. Feels so good to be me. What's easy for others are struggles for me. I do things differently. Doesn't make me broken. It just makes me me. People helping me to get through have their own struggles too. Even though they have their strength, they are human like me. Through these struggles we build our strength. We all want to feel healthy. Even though we make mistakes, struggles build our strength.